transformation happening. You could be, but Ben would not take it. He kept, changing the handles. He kept changing the questions he was asking until he got to the heart of the matter.
Hello everyone, I'm Ravi from India. What I liked about today's session was the client was kind of feeling overwhelmed with what was going on in his life, and he was speaking about multiple aspects, right? And the coach decided not to start actual coaching process unless the issue was pinpointed, and that took some time for the coach also to work with the client and to help the client focus on what is that we are dealing with today, right? And only after that got identified, the actual the shifting of the thought process started. So that was wonderful, although it took some time, but the coach was persistent in making sure that the issue is very clearly identified. So that's what I appreciate about today's session. Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to learn about that.
Okay, good. So let's hold that for the coach when we get into the main room. What are the other curiosities that you have? Any other person?
I think for me, I was just really curious about coaching. I've heard a lot about coaching and what, how it transforms and helps others. But I've never witnessed a coaching session. So I think it was really my curiosity that brought me here, but really marveled at the skills that Ben employed to get the client to where, he became a reflective client. I think that really was wonderful to see. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Good.
A very good. The horse was a very good way of actually making the client visualize the things that the safety blanket was actually covering up. So that was a good aha moment, I think.
Can I share? The coach here really showed the power of observations. You know how, I guess all of us here, when we're with friends and family, it's so easy for us to give advice because we're not the ones experiencing their problem. But when we're the ones experiencing the problem, it's so hard for us to find our own solutions a lot of times. And the key here, which the coach did so well, is offering observation. So imagine as a human being, if we have that capacity to observe as we experience. And since this is a challenge for most of us, the observation showed by the coach and how we can show it to our clients would be such a big help in helping them solve their problems. So that was such a eureka for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there was an understanding intellectually, but there was obviously something, quite in the second layer about what was the disconnect. And it was interesting in that the horse analogy, the question of what is your relationship with horse actually shifted the should, so the client actually became in the now moment.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. So you see that the layering in the conversation, and then the reflection that help the client to see or to be aware of what is happening in here in the system, not just only the situation, but it's in here, which, something is happening in here, and what is that? So the coach just reflect that too, and then just let the client figure it out by himself. Great.
Basically, that if he that by being present and enjoying the moment, it will the material will also solve by itself and with the bonus of the enjoyment along the way. That's really what strikes me today in this conversation, because we know that in our world, the material is so pressurizing us. We have so much responsibilities, and it felt like it's exactly where I was at the beginning of the conversation. It was crawling under this material responsibilities, have to make things happen in the material world, and it was disconnected. And to me, along the conversation, it happened that it was connected to his emotions or spiritual self, thinking like, by the way, yes, that's true. If I'm here and if I enjoy it, like the material will solve by itself, like it was switching places. And it's what I felt. It really felt like that, like very strongly. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's.
I think the other thing that I noticed and observed from the coach was the way in which he observed that the client wasn't quite there. Towards the end, I was like, wow. He was able to pick up that there was just something slightly off. And with his inquiry, got the client to go even deeper and connect more with his heart. So yeah, that also impressed me very much with this session.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And also the power of connectivity, connecting things to say, I hear this and I hear this. What's your relationship with the horse? How does the horse see you? That really brings the client to reflect, step out of the way he's seeing things and give an opportunity to review. What am I really talking about? How is this impacting me now? And I think the power of the metaphor was so resounding in today's case study. And it shows also to me that when your client is in the thinking space, is not really reflecting, look for a good metaphor to let it raise, to let the client step out, to see himself in this.
What make you uptight? What exactly you were,
Yes, I was.
what it's your observing that bother you?
It's not what I'm observing, but the client was very clearly. What was uptight is not the clients, but the content was just going around the situation, and it was, yes, and it was quite prolonged, as in it continued to build upon one another. It's like if it starts and then ends, I'm fine. But it's kind of like leading from one story to another, to another, to another. And I think I'm losing my client's mind if that continue, if it continue in that directions. And yes, even when the bullet was reflected back, wow, it started off with a challenge, then a concern, and now a worry. And then the clients got it, but then go back, the content return back again to the justification. And that was where, you don't get it. Or you got it, but I lose you. Right? So that was like, oh my God, I had to start again. And it was right 10 minutes into that conversation, and I have to restart the entire process, because I was hoping that at least at that point, when the clients can recognize the worry, that was like for me, wow, like, okay, I got the clients to be able to look at the worry. And so when I was making the inquiry, what is that make this necessary a worry, it went off the tangent again. And then it's not just off the tangent, but it continued to build on that off the tangent. That was where I was like, oh, desperate, for help. Okay, so that's where I felt that I'm not in control of the process right now. If I allowed the conversation to go in that direction. So that was that 10 minutes of, the Chinese say luna, luna, that means endure, endure. Okay, where you have to bite your tongue and and retain your presence and okay, no, it's not easy. Okay, but over the years, I'm gradually learning, how to be a little bit more gracious, in this space. So that's I'm still in my learning curve too. That's a good news. Good, Louis. Then we go to you. Then Irene. Then we have David and Ravin and Laura. So let's go with Louis first. Louis. Oh, Louis, you're on mute.
Okay, the question is the following. Ben, when did you feel the client really started shifting?
Okay. The clients actually shift in a few moments in the conversation. It's a matter of allowing the shift to remain in the client. So this is something that we did not teach so far in the training. We only teach you to notice the shift. But a shift is just a starting point. The shift needs to have an impact to opens up the mind to gain that learning. So the clients actually shifted a bit to got something, but then it returned back, right? And you can see also from moment to moment in the conversation that clients actually can connect to something, but then the mind kind of like, was trying to justify it, or the mind tried to make sense of it. Not that the client is difficult, but the mind basically has that logic inside it. And so the logical mind is interfering with the greater mind. It's a matter of how we learn to, you know, switch ourselves. But the shift happens and it's not sustaining enough for the clients to be in that moment of learning space. So that's where I have to be a little bit more directive to hold the clients so that the clients can support his mind to be in this moment to have a deeper look into it. Is that making sense? Okay, great. I was just thinking I'm just talking to myself. Did I lost anyone along the way? Or you can understand what I'm trying to describe, right? At least from the phenomena of how the client is displaying. Whoosh. So that's another good way of learning, that we do not just listen to the client's content. We listen to the whole of the entire, the totality. That means the clients and their content and the experience itself in the moment as the client is either talking or responding to your questions. Yeah? So that's one great learning. Then we move to Irene now. Irene?
Thank you, Ben. When you said you were uptight and you were worried, what I saw in this conversation is someone who was taming a wild horse and who had a firm grip on the reins. And as this horse was running in different directions, you were reining that horse back to where you wanted it to be. You did not express, I didn't see any, you see you sweating. I didn't see you as someone who was losing control of this wild horse. So tell me, how did you manage to stay calm? And it wasn't obvious to us that you were having all that struggle, and you maintained a firm grip on the reins of this wild horse.
Well, I think thanks for that acknowledgement and kind word. And what I would encourage is, as part of your journey as a professional coach, you it would be very great if you can cultivate the capacity of you noticing yourself, right? That is a very beautiful, a very powerful uh, personal growth journey. So yeah, you can pretend externally, but then whatever that you're experiencing internally, you should be able to have a good sense around it. The moment you are able to notice something, that is a moment where what you are noticing is not in control. But it doesn't mean that they are not present. They are still actively, interfering, and henceforth staying noticed and recognizing that it presence and be able to know his presence in the moment is kind of like a constant work in progress. Because until to a point that I think with repetitions and continuity of just noticing it and then be aware that they are present, just like the Beautiful Mind, the movie. Have you ever watched the movie Beautiful Mind? The gentleman who suffered with schizophrenics, and he had to train his mind to live with the illusions, and the illusion was always there in front of him. But he learns to train his own mind powerful enough to recognize that this is illusion and ignore it. Okay, and that's the power of being an observer, and it's not easy. It has to be trained, right? But that's where we can best serve, because that's where we are not blind to whatever reality that unfolds in front of us, that we can always have that choice to learn to respond. So that's the best that I could do. Is, yes, you need to cultivate that. Now, for those who in the second level training, remember we told you, cultivate your practice. Practice your practice. Okay, so these are spiritual disciplines that will, spiritual not in the sense of religious, as in things that you do to nurture a way of being. So professional coaching at this level of deep transformations requires a partnership between your intellect and a strong being, because who you are is how you coach. Your own life journey, your own ability to regulate, your own ability to discern and see through things is certainly going to be a very powerful agent to support your coaching conversations, especially those conversations whereby the obvious is not the obvious. Okay, and to be able to open up that space, and to help people to look within cannot be attained by logic itself. It requires the art and the science to come together. To do the art, like painting, well, you know the technique, but you still need to do your breathing. Right, a lot of breath control, yeah, to create a steady hand for the masterpiece to have the shape and form. So these are my encouragement to you. Start your practice. Okay, do it even just for 5 minutes. It's good. Do it. 5 minutes. Do it. All right. Then slowly extend it to a point you can say, if I don't do it, I will die. I just can't. I need to do my centering first before I go out the house. I will not be complete until I nurture. That should be the way, and then we carry that with us into the conversations. Cool. There's a Chinese saying, 临时 if you don't 平时不烧香，临时抱佛脚 means if you don't pray on the daily on the daily basis, don't run to your God in the last minute when you need help. He will not be there. No. But that's a Chinese idiom. That's saying that you cannot keep it to the last minute and then you try to brush it up. Okay, so do it on a small dosage on a daily basis, and you will eventually reap the benefit of it. Cool. High five. Wonderful question. Now let's turn our attention to our gentleman first, and then we have Laura as the third one, right? Ravinkar. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Ben, I had this question in my mind, not only based upon today's demonstration, but had this question in my mind over many other demonstrations. Sometimes as a coach, if I feel that my client is being nice to the coach, and that is interfering from and keeping him away from being authentic,
Yes.
then, and if I have this feeling as a coach, how do I bring that on the table? Is that a good
Wow.
thing to communicate to the client? That
Yes, good. Ravinka, that's a very, very good questions. Now, if I read you and if I understood you correctly, perhaps you're not saying that the client is being nice, but I think what you're trying to point to is, what if I feel that the obvious is not the obvious? That means what the client says doesn't seem to be really what it is, and you just feel that somehow there is more to it. Is that capturing what you are trying to express here?
Slightly different.
Okay.
Sometimes what and this especially I have felt when the coach and client both are aware of the coaching framework and are part of the coaching community. Sometimes I feel that the coaching work, the shifting of the thought process has not happened, and the client has started speaking about, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm gaining out of the conversation. When as a coach, I feel that the work has not happened as of now.
Mm.
And the client is just being nice because he there might be a feeling that the coaching should work. So he's pretending that he has got this learning, he has got this shift. But as a coach, I feel that the shift has not happened yet.
Okay, so we're talking about two different things here, and I can only speak of what is happening in today's case study. So, in today's case study, the client is genuinely interested. What I'm noticing is that there is a block in the client's conscious mind. The conscious mind is not able to break through to reach something that is there. And because the client is so willing to work around it, so it's not that the client is deliberately trying to make it difficult. So henceforth, today's case study shows that there is actually another unconscious layer that the client's conscious mind cannot access, but it's felt obvious to me as a coach that I want to be able to get to that unconscious level for the client. Like it is there, but it's not sinking deep enough for the client's mind to learn about it. And it felt like that the boat is still on the surface and having difficulty going down. And it has nothing to do with the clients not willing to cooperate. It's more of how I, as a coach now, can create a process to enable the client's mind to go to sink down a little bit into the deeper layer. Okay, so I can only say that for today's case study. Okay, on what has been presented by the case itself. Cool, good. So there is no straightforward questions when such thing happens, partly because it's no longer a procedure. Okay, that means there's no sequence, but a lot of observation, a lot of you recognizing what that phenomena is, and also be very skillful enough to know how your inquiry is going to land for the client.
Yeah.
And also watch out how the client's mind is responding to those inquiry, because the mind is not able to go down, and henceforth the response given by the client might not be useful or might not support where the inquiry wants to bring the mind there. So that's where experience and bonus comes in. Okay, to be very blunt, of course we believe in whatever the client is saying. Whatever the client says is genuinely true, and we want to, but we don't take everything that they said that is useful for the process. No, so that was one point where I inquire what is that makes it necessary a worry, but the client's mind interpret that as what is your worry.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where experience comes in, whereby you need to know what you're observing and what is given to you. So when I heard that, then I realized, oh my God, it's not landing. That question is not landing the way it's supposed to be, and the client seems to see it in another perspective. So that's where I have to make a very I need to make some decisions, at that point of the conversation. Do I let it go? Do I stick with what the client is saying, or what should I do? But because I'm very firm with my process, that's why I decided to go for a very difficult route, and that's to challenge my clients and say, hey, just tell me what you understood. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, the client says he understood, then that's great. Tell me then what you understood about what I'm asking you. Very, very strict and demanding, but I mean, if the clients cannot see it, what else can I do? I mean, I cannot ask another questions if the clients cannot see it, right?
Yeah.
So I have to be firm and yet insist on my stand and see whether that lands for the clients. Now I'm putting that as a bet because I can see that my clients is very cooperative and my client is willing to work on the issue. So I have an upper hand here for me to put
Yeah.
that strict demand. Good. Oh.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you.
Well, it's good that you raised that question. If not, otherwise, all of us will walk away with the idea, oh, let's interrupt the client.
Ben, I just have one sub question though. So as
Can you hold on there first? I just want to come back to you later because
Sure.
there's two more person there, but you will come after Laura. Good. David, can we have you go next, and then after that, Laura, you can go after David. David, you're on mute. Would you like to unmute yourself first?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, I appreciate that you created a good sense of being on the learning with the client.
Yeah.
And you persisted to let the client know that you felt something was missing.
Yes.
I thought that was an important way to keep the client to become reflective. And yeah, I could sense there was some struggle. So my question is a kind of a student question, was there an element or some elements that you were struggling to get clear?
Yeah.
Maybe the expression of desire or the real focus? Was there any of those that you were particularly struggling to be clear in your mind how to proceed?
Great. Thanks for asking that wonderful questions. Okay. So let me show you what I'm thinking about. Okay. First, when the conversation starts, what I'm trying to get to focus on is, can I get my client's mind away from talking around the consequence? So as I wasn't interrupting, I was just listening and listening to see what comes out from there. So as I was listening, and I just realized that it has this tendency of building itself up as a momentum. Okay, that means whatever the client starts to build something up, it goes in that direction more and more. So that was a tendency that I noticed as the client was speaking. So my first thing that I'm looking for is, how can I now quickly make sure that the build up does not bring the client's mind away from what might be the issue that we need to explore today. But up to that point of time, I have no idea what exactly are we looking for. Okay, there's no clue that is an expression of desire. Obviously, in the context, it seems that there are, like, I want to build my business, I want to find a skill set, I want to sustain the business, but that to me is like a situational context that the client is addressing. So it doesn't felt to me that that is an expression of desire, but it's merely stating it as a description. So no expression of desire, no explicitly game frame around what is it that the clients want to create. But as I look at the contour of the story, because the changing landscape is something that caught my attention. The client uses the word challenge at the beginning and change it into a concern, and then later on use the word I'm worried. So that shows some, like, for me, I feel that, hey, I think there might be some evidence that the client is concerned. I mean, there's something weighing the clients down. Okay, so that's where I decided to say maybe we can therefore direct the client's mind towards understanding what exactly is supporting what is weighing the clients down, not necessarily what is the cause of what is weighing the clients down, or what is it that the client is concerned about. Unfortunately, in the second part of the conversation, the content flows into what is my concern and why should I be concerned. That was like, okay, those are the reasons behind that, you see. But and the clients cannot, the mind is not able to switch to reflect on what is it that is supporting this concern. Okay, so the client's mind at that point of time stays at that conscious level of the logic. So that's where that's where I'm looking at and try to see how can I find an opportunity to turn that around for the clients to be a little bit more reflective in noticing himself. Okay, and thereafter the rest of the conversation follows this direction. So when the clients go off the tangent on the third segment of the conversation, that's where I took the stand to tell the clients that I'm going to interrupt. You know, if the conversation is moving on in this manner, and then with that permission, then I slowly guide the clients towards being able to notice himself. And I think from the fourth segment onwards, the conversation gradually pick up with the clients being able to notice himself. So that's what I'm looking for specifically, not so much of the element, but how the client is responding in the moment.
Good. That's good. Thank you.
Great. So bottom line, I'm looking at how the client's mind learns and responds based on what the process is, and then use the process to adjust or modify the way the client's mind is thinking. Good. Great. Thank you, David, for that wonderful questions. Laura, you will be next. And Laura, this is the first time I recall seeing you. Will you be kind enough to just briefly introduce where are you calling from?
Oh yeah, can you hear me okay?
A little bit soft.
A little bit soft. Is this better? I hold it up like this.
Okay,
Still
we'll
not?
do our best.
Oh yeah, I think I might have a problem with my microphone. 1 second.
Okay, now it sounds better.
Ah yes, I think I've got to get close to the laptop. Yes, my name is Laura, and I'm the first time that I've dialed into one of these sessions, so very much a guest. And yeah, calling from London.
Wow.
So yeah, just wanted to say, well, firstly, I thought it was brilliant, the coaching, because I remember saying to my partner, this must be really hard because firstly, there's loads of technical issues, and that's quite hard to sit there and just be silent, wondering has he heard the question or not, because it could have been a tech problem. Or so I thought that, and we were not phased at all on the external. So I just thought it was fantastic. And the fact that there was, as you said, kind of circular conversations or not really granular. And I just thought it was wonderful to see how you were able to really break that down. But yeah, so anyway, my question, I've got two, but Ravi, I can separate them out. But I noticed that you didn't use any specific words that Joseph said about his problem. So you just asked questions without using his words back. And in the past, when I've gone to previous coaching kind of things like this, or when I saw a coach, they would often use my own words back to me.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, that must be something maybe of this particular school of coaching. Is that something you would then avoid doing?
Well, that's a very good observation considering that this is the first time you're joining us. It speaks about your experience around coaching, that you're pretty quite familiar with what this is all about. What I can say here is coaching conversation relies heavily on language itself. And language itself, it depends on how you see language. Language can be just words people use. But if you don't understand the linguistic part of how people express meaning from using language, then you totally miss the point of what coaching conversation is about, because an AI can easily pick up the words and use that to formulate a question. But what we want is to use the capacity of AI like consumer behavior analyst. When a particular range of word has been used, what does it belongs to? And that allows the coach to be able to mine much more valuable content from what the people is expressing. You know, to make it more simple, it's like writing a story. A story. What makes a story wonderful story is the symbol behind all that people is talking about. So to make the story powerful, there will be things like expression of desire, concern. You know, what is this all about? You know, and each of them is a study by itself. So in today, basically, all the words that the client is using can be categorized into two broad categories: external peripheral and internal referencing, right? So a lot of it is around the external peripheral. Now, if 80% of it is on the external peripheral, each time you pick on the words that belongs to the external peripheral, it only reinforces the attention that is going to be given to the external peripheral. And we know from here on the onset, the issue is never on the external peripheral. And if we focus too much on that, then this makes this conversation very tactical on helping the clients to figure out something. While it still can be done, the clients will walk away with a good insight on, okay, how I can do things better. But the shift does not impact the system itself. Right? The clients will not be able to connect to, hey, actually I can switch between the two mind of my own. Right? Those are internal system. Right? So when the client is saying something, we take a look at the content and decipher that between the first layer or second layer, or what is it is this representing. Okay, so that's why we don't literally use word for word and repeat it back, because in our school we say we do not need professional parrot.
I like it, yeah.
Okay, because words is just words unless you are able to apply a narrative and understanding that the word that people use can be understood differently. Then you can pick up things like, oh, I hear challenge, I hear concern, I hear worry. These three words are basically category words. These are some exact word of the client, but the way it was reflected back to the client in the absence of the details make that a category. In other words, you chunk the perspective up naturally when you are able to group the category of words together. Now, for perspective shift, that's the prerequisite. How elevated is the perspective first before you can shift it? Now, if your perspective is exactly the same, like, oh, I hear you say blah, 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 and TTT, and blah, 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 and gah, that means your perspective and the client's perspective is almost the same. And it will be very challenging to make any shift in that sense.
How interesting.
Well, that is a proprietary framework of CMA here, where we talk about creating a shift. It's not like NLP technique. Is using a different kind of science to help coaches to make those observations.
Do you think that do clients ever get frustrated that to say you're not listening to me because you haven't said the word back? Yeah,
I'm sure they will be frustrated, especially when you're challenging them. You know what I mean? But if frustrated for a good sense, I think that is something that we should be discerning, right? Not all frustration is negative. There will be necessary frustration or uptightness. And the key here is to be able to understand that if that is healthy range, then that is natural. Good. So that's a little bit of added perspective here.
Thank you.
When the conversation get too nice, sometimes nothing is nothing will come out from it. But
Yeah.
on the controversial, it cannot be a fierce conversation, right? So the balance of compassion and firmness, and yet at the same time, strict to the process is what we would like to have. Good. So thank you, Laura, for joining us. Hope you find value in today's learning. Back to you, Ravinka, unless someone has a different has a question to ask. If not, Ravinka, you can go first while we will have the last person to share later on. What's your sub question?
Thank you so much, Ben. My sub question was, is it okay for the coach to share this intuition with the client that, you don't owe anything to the coach or to the coaching process. We are here to serve you. So don't feel any pressure and be yourself, be authentic so that we can serve you.
I would like to put a curfew around that question. Okay. In general essence, the coach is allowed to share. The question is, what are you sharing? That is the point. Okay. Not all intuitions is okay. Trained intuitions is what we want. Not any intuition. The permission is granted to the coach to share because it's an equal partnership. But the question is never about whether can I share or not. It's never that question. The question is, what sort of intuition are you offering to your client? Got it? Okay. You need to notice your own intuition and be able to make sense. Is that coming from a point of judgment, or is that coming from a point of observation? Right? And these are things that need to be trained. And that's so much that I can emphasize.
Thank you so much. That's helpful. Thank you.
Because too much freedom without responsibility is called chaos.
Yeah.
We respect freedom, but there must be responsibility. If I say, yes, you can share, trust me, all the students will start to offer their deduction to their client. Okay, so that's the curfew that I would like to put on. Is this a wonderful session today? Good, thank you. Well, do join us for more live coaching sessions.